Hey, this is Professor Triplet, and I want to go over a technique to make sure that when you're doing your photogrammetry scans, everything is in focus. So I'm going to do it in a controlled environment because it's easier to show in that sense, but this stuff can be taken out to the field, and really all you need is to have a Taylor's tape and access to a depth of field calculator, which you can find online for free. So let's go ahead and get into the techniques, and then I'll show you some stuff on the computer that will help you to calculate what you need to calculate to make sure your scans are going to come out nice and sharp and in focus. All right, so we've got our scenario here. And the first thing I do is I'm going to measure basically the widest point of my object from the angle that I'm going to be shooting the object. So when I take my tape here, I look at this and it's about 6 centimeters. So I like to, I would use a little bit longer than 6 centimeters when I figure out my depth of field. I'm going to make sure that my 6 centimeters, I'm going over that a little bit. I'm also going to check out other areas, like let's look at the shoulders. So that's under 6 centimeters. I'm going to go from like the elbow to this hat, and that's about 6 centimeters as well. So we don't have to worry about anything more than 6 centimeters unless we go and invert the camera and go straight down, and then you'd want the rest of this to be in focus. But I probably won't have to worry too much about that because I can isolate the head by just focusing on the head and not getting the rest of the body. Just thinking about, I do want to get the top of the head a little bit, but I'll be able to do that without having to get the whole body inside of there. But we also have to take in consideration how far is our camera going to be from our object. So right now, I kind of did some pre-calculations, so I know that I'm about in the right spot, but I'm going to get on the computer and show you uh, what I need. But I'm going to find, usually cameras have a little uh, plane that shows like where the actual sensor is. That's like the focal plane. And you want to measure from that focal plane basically to the center of your object. And so right now I'm at about, I would say 37 and a half centimeters. So something about right, like in that area. And then we need to go over to the computer and we need to do some calculations.
Okay, so I'm on the web and I'm just going to go to photopills and I already have it in there. So it's photopills.com/calculators/depth of field. I'll just put that in. And I've already got this set up. It actually usually remembers. But so I'm using a Panasonic. Uh, it's in this GH4 line. They don't have the GH6 in here, but that still works. It's the sensor size that matters. And you can go through here and just pick um, whatever your camera is and the relevant sensor size. So I'll just go ahead and pick this, and then I'll go ahead and my focal length is 25, so I already have that in there. You just want to put that in. And then you can pick your aperture, but what you probably want to do is start off with like your distance, and you could sit there and put in, let's just start off with like f4. So we'll start off with f4, and you can see at 35 centimeters, I'm going to get 2.19 centimeters of depth of field. So that's not going to be enough at f4. So we just go ahead and say, hey, what happens if we go to f8? Okay, so now we're at 4.39. We're getting closer. And then at f11 at 35 centimeters, I get this. Now, um, you there's concerns about diffraction and stuff like that. Certain lenses seem to have. I've tested a whole bunch of lenses. Some lenses seem to have more diffraction than others, or at least it kind of shows up. I think they should be about the same. But I think this lens I can go to like f22, and then at that rate I could actually move closer to the object. But if you're worried about diffraction, then you just kind of want to find a reasonable number where you can get close enough, get enough of the object in frame, but also have enough depth of field. So this is what I'm resting on. So you just want to figure this number out. And then now as I go through and I start taking pictures, I'm going to make sure that I'm always at least 35 centimeters away. Now, um, the focal plane symbol on the camera should look something like this. So I don't know if every camera has it, but my GH6 does, and I have other cameras that do. I haven't checked every camera to see if it has it because I don't use them all for photogrammetry. But that's what you're going to be looking for, and then you're just going to measure every time you set up your camera to a new position that you're this distance apart. If you're going with a tripod, you're just going straight up and down. This won't be too much of a problem, but if you start to tilt the camera, then it does change the distance. Going higher than this is fine, but going lower than this, then you're going to lose some depth of field. And what you'll notice is that the field in front is actually less than the field behind. So what you want to do is when you focus on your object, you're going to focus not dead center in the object, but a little bit in front of the center because you need more depth of field in the front. Or I should say this number is lower in the front, so you need to make sure you cover that. Okay, so let's get into actually taking the pictures and I'll show examples of that.
Okay, so you can see I've got the camera on here, and I just want to go ahead and make sure that your camera is in manual focus, but not on the lens. You want to make sure it's on manual focus in the camera. And I have this button set to back button focus, and I have my peaking on so I could always see that I'm in focus. It looks like it's a little bit hot right now, but my histogram looks okay. So everything's within the right range of my histogram, and I've already checked the distance, so I know that's good. And what I have, so this is a little bit of an elaborate setup, but I've got a trigger wire going to this Edelkrone head one, I think it is. It's something like that. I forget the name of it. But anyway, it's a turntable that turns, and then what I do is I'm gonna put this battery in there. That's what turns it on. So you just drop the battery in. Ah, it helps if you turn it the right way. Okay, let me move that a little bit. So I'm gonna move it back. Okay, and I'll hear this thing beep, and then once that beeps, I'm gonna get my phone open, and then I'm gonna go over to my Edelkrone app. It'll automatically connect. All right, so I'm focused on the middle, basically in between the two legs. So that should be right around the middle, but a little bit on the front leg. So that's exactly where I want it. So in my app, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the 360, like so. I'm going to set the count to 36. That's usually what I do. So it's 1 degree for each turn, or I should say 10 degrees for each turn, so you get 360 degrees. And then my interval is at 0.5. I think that'll be okay. Let's see, my camera's at 1 point. I'm going to put my interval at maybe 1. Let's just give it a second in between. And then I'll hit done, and then I can just hit automatic shoot. And then it's just going to start turning. I have a 2-second timer on there, which I don't necessarily need. So actually, I'm going to abort this really quick. And I'll set this back to just the normal single autofocus. Okay. Wash, rinse, and repeat. I'm just going to go back to the 360 and hit automatic shoot. And then the abort button's down there if you need to abort. And then this thing's just going to go ahead and it's going to turn it. It's going to fire off the pictures for me. I can kind of go get a cup of coffee or something like that. And you just wait for this to be done. And then we're going to go ahead and reposition the camera and we'll get the pictures into the computer. So just a little thought pattern of like when you're doing this, if you're new to photogrammetry, once I get done with this round, I will just go ahead and move the camera up a little bit. And I'm going to make sure that I've always got a decent amount of overlap. So what I'll usually do is whatever's in the middle, I make sure that it's, maybe in the top or bottom 3/4 of the frame, depending on which way I'm moving the camera, in the next shot. And then I just go and get the pictures all the way through. And then for the head, I'll have to go a little bit top down. I don't need to go completely 100% right over it, although sometimes that actually can work pretty good, but it's not always necessary. Depends on the object. Sometimes you do need to do that. So we're just waiting. Right now we're at 20 pictures, 21 pictures. And as you can see, this highly speeds up the process. When I first started doing this, I was either walking around an object or I was turning on a turntable myself manually that I made out of just like a piece of wood and a Lazy Susan piece. And of course, it kind of took forever. But if you can, remote triggering, even if you don't have a turntable like this, you can remote trigger usually through a camera app, or you can buy a remote trigger. They're actually not that expensive. So then that way you're not touching your camera constantly. You just definitely want to have your camera nice and still. But I can pretty much ensure that um, that I should be covering the whole distance here. Technically, I didn't get the hypotenuse of the square on the bottom, but the further corner probably won't ever be uh, fully seen from the camera angle, so I should be okay. So you can see now it's done one revolution, and now I can go ahead and move my camera. So you'll have to excuse me because if I'm recording this, I am going to definitely be getting in the way of this. So I'm going to keep my eye on where the midpoint is, which is like kind of right on the ankles, a little bit below the knee. And I'll just pull this up a little bit. And I'll just make sure that those ankles are somewhere over here still within the frame. And now I should be ready to shoot, but I always refocus and make sure I'm getting the focus a little bit in front, like I mentioned before. And then the other thing I'll do is I'll remeasure just to make sure that I'm about the same distance away from the center point. And I've got the wrong part of the tape. So here. So I'll just kind of go like here. You don't want to touch your item, and you just want to make sure that, yeah, I'm well within the range. That should work. And I've refocused, so I know I've got everything ready to go. And I just go back to my app, automatic shoot, and let's just let this thing go. Okay, we're in the final stage here, and I've got the camera pretty high up, looking down at the top of the head. So this has gone through about halfway. And as you can see, a stand like this is convenient, and it allows me to actually tilt all the way over the object. So if I needed one more on the top, I can actually go completely vertical over the object. And the other thing too is that I can put a ball head on top of this so that I could turn and rotate the camera if I wanted to. So that's another option. Because if you have the camera oriented in portrait mode, you'll get more overlap a lot easier because you've got more length in that direction. So yeah, this is about done, and we'll go ahead and look at the results.
All right, so let's look at these results. We've got our shaded model. It's got about 24 million polys or so. It's all the details here. Looks pretty good. The backside. And we could just go ahead and turn it to solid. Kind of see the details a little bit better in solid mode. There you go. All right, so everything looks sharp and detailed. I haven't built any textures for it yet, so this is just the vertex color at the moment. And it does look a bit washed out compared to the pictures, but I could always resaturate if I need to. But yeah, it turned out really nice, really crisp, and everything's in focus. You don't see anything that's, you don't get any blurry parts or anything like that, just because we calculated all of that information beforehand. So, all right, that's all I wanted to show for this one, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.